The story began with a boy named Aono Eiji, who was traveling by metro when he suddenly received a message from Miyuki. In the message, she apologized and explained that something urgent had come up related to her club activities, and she couldn't get away from it. Eiji replied saying he understood, told her not to worry, and wished her good luck with her club practice. But as he read her message, it struck him. It was supposed to be their special birthday date. His mind drifted back to how things had started. Amanda Miyuki, his childhood friend, had become his girlfriend after he confessed his feelings to her last Christmas. To him, she had always seemed like an idol, someone far out of reach, someone he admired from a distance. He believed that if they hadn't grown up together, he probably wouldn't have had the courage to even talk to her, let alone be in a relationship. It had been 6 months since they started dating, but because of his hesitation, they hadn't even shared their first kiss yet. He never imagined that she would cancel their very first official date. He had gone all out, making plans to make the day special. As the metro reached a stop, he stepped out and realized he had arrived at the movie theater where they were supposed to go together. Standing there, he began imagining what it would have been like, sitting beside her, holding her hand, sharing that perfect moment. But he quickly shook his head, snapping out of his daydream, wondering why he was getting lost in such thoughts. He turned away and started walking down the street. As he passed by, he suddenly noticed a couple kissing. He paused, caught off guard by the sight, and realized the area looked oddly familiar. Then it suddenly hit Eiji. He had wandered into the Love Hotel district. The realization left him completely stunned. His thoughts drifted to a memory of being in a hotel room with Miyuki, the two of them sitting awkwardly on the bed. He felt a wave of frustration wash over him and mentally berated himself, calling himself an idiot for letting his imagination run wild. Deciding it was best to leave, he turned to go back the way he came. Just then, he heard a girl behind him pleading with a boy to stop. Something about her voice struck a chord. It sounded familiar. Curiosity made him turn around, and to his shock, he saw Miyuki standing there with another boy. In disbelief, he blurted out her name, asking if it was really her. She too looked startled and called out his name in return. For a moment, they both stood frozen, questioning each other about why the other was there. But Eiji's confusion quickly turned to anger. He marched up to her and grabbed her wrist tightly, demanding an explanation. She flinched in pain and told him he was hurting her. Only then did he realize how hard he had been gripping her and quickly let go, murmuring an apology. Before he could say anything else, the boy with Miyuki stepped forward and, without warning, slapped Eiji across the face with such force that he stumbled and fell to the ground. Dazed, Eiji stared up at the boy and asked what was going on. The boy, clearly furious, snapped back and asked what Eiji thought he was doing to his girl. Still trying to make sense of the situation, Eiji said that Miyuki had been the one who cheated. But the boy just scoffed and accused Eiji of being nothing more than a stalker. He then turned to Miyuki and urged her to speak, maybe tell Eiji the truth, like how she was only dating him because they were childhood friends, or how she always thought he was boring. With a mocking laugh, he even added that she found Eiji's sweaty hands disgusting whenever he tried to hold hers. The words hit Eiji like a punch to the gut. He stared at Miyuki, barely able to whisper her name, waiting for her to deny it. But the boy, senpai, as she had once called him, continued, reminding her that she used to say such things whenever they were in bed together. Miyuki stood frozen, shocked by what he had just revealed. Senpai then looked at her and asked gently what was wrong. He told her that if she really liked Eiji that much, he wouldn't mind walking away. Right there, right then. He gave her a choice. Either break up with Eiji or end things with him. Trembling, Miyuki begged him not to abandon her. She said that if he left, she wouldn't be able to go on. Senpai smiled softly, placed a hand on her head, and told her that as long as she understood her place, that was enough for him. Then, in a calm but firm tone, he asked her to say it clearly, out loud, who Eiji really was. She finally responded, saying that although Eiji had once been her childhood friend, now he felt more like a clingy stalker, an abusive, horrible boyfriend she could no longer tolerate. Senpai, clearly enjoying the scene, urged her to say it more clearly, to tell that delusional stalker directly and without hesitation. Miyuki turned to Eiji, hesitated for a moment, and then apologized. She told him that she couldn't be with him anymore and asked him not to talk to her at school either. Her words, though soft, hit harder than any slap. And just like that, a line was drawn. From that moment onward, Eiji felt as though his once peaceful and happy everyday life had started crumbling around him. Later that day, he returned home to Kitchen Aono, the family's small restaurant, where his parents were busy preparing food in the kitchen. His father greeted him warmly, unaware of the storm Eiji carried inside, while his mother, glancing at the clock, remarked that he was home earlier than usual. His brother also noticed something was off and asked if he had skipped lunch, offering to make him something to eat. Eiji simply smiled faintly, said he was fine, and thanked him. But deep down, he felt anything but fine. He quietly went to his room and lay on his bed, too shaken to move, too hollow to cry. The hours passed, but he barely noticed. The silence of his room became heavy, and each second felt like a weight pressing down on him. Over and over, he saw the same thing: Miyuki and Senpai together, sitting intimately on a bed. In the dream, Miyuki laughed and told Senpai how disgusting she found Eiji. She said he had completely misunderstood their relationship just because they were childhood friends and had grown unbearably clingy. Senpai smirked and told her to forget about that creepy guy, that she only needed to focus on him now. She nodded in agreement, and then, right in front of Eiji's helpless dream self, the two of them began to kiss. It was unbearable. In the dream, Eiji silently screamed for it all to stop. Just stop already. But the nightmare wouldn't end. When it finally did, he jolted upright in bed, drenched in sweat and unable to breathe properly. He realized then how afraid he had become, even of falling asleep. Unable to lie still any longer, he got up, washed his face to chase away the lingering horror, prepared himself for an evening walk, hoping the fresh air might clear his thoughts, or at least numb the ache in his chest. Eiji was walking down the street, lost in his thoughts, when a classmate approached him from behind, casually slinging an arm around his shoulder and asking if there was anything new with Amada-san. Eiji gave a faint, awkward laugh and replied vaguely that things were well. At that moment, he heard someone call his name. When he turned around, he saw Miyuki looking at him, which brought back memories from their childhood. He recalled a long-ago moment when Miyuki had asked if there was someone he liked. He had nervously asked why she suddenly brought that up. Trying to explain, she had told him he never talked about such things, and even she rarely mentioned those topics. In response, she had playfully suggested that maybe she should just become his bride. Eiji had been surprised and confused, but Miyuki laughed and said she was just kidding. He told her to cut it out, but she continued laughing and teased him, saying he had taken her seriously. Returning to the present, as Eiji stood there, he suddenly noticed Miyuki standing in front of him. Summoning his courage, he tried to speak to her, but she turned back slowly and quietly said his name. Before he could reply, another girl abruptly stepped between them and with a sharp glare told him not to get involved with Miyuki anymore, calling him an abusive creep. Eiji was left in shock, unable to understand her words. The girl grabbed Miyuki's arm, saying it was time to go and warning Eiji that if he continued stalking Miyuki, she wouldn't let him get away with it. Speaking directly to Miyuki, she urged her to properly ignore stalkers and not give in, to which Miyuki quietly replied, "Yeah." After returning home, Eiji lay down on his bed, trying to block out the events of the day. Just as he was settling into silence, his phone suddenly vibrated beside him. Startled, he sat up and quickly grabbed it. When he checked the screen, he saw the message had come from an unknown account. Opening it, he was shocked to read, "Die, you are disgusting." His eyes widened in disbelief as more hateful messages flooded in, with insults like abusive scumbag, violent jerk, creep, cheater, and scum, repeated over and over. His inbox filled with subject lines such as, "This violent creep, the worst, stalker, and just drop out." It felt as if those voices were echoing in his mind. Staring at the screen in disbelief, he muttered to himself that he hadn't done anything wrong and wondered what was happening and why he was being treated that way. Overcome by anxiety, Eiji suddenly sprang from his bed in panic. The next day, Eiji had forced himself to go to school, even though his heart felt heavy. As he stood in front of the classroom door, he tried to calm the storm inside him, quietly convincing himself that everything would be fine, that he just needed to act like it was a normal day. With that fragile resolve, he opened the door and walked in. He moved silently to his seat, but no matter how hard he tried to ignore them, the hushed whispers and sideways glances that followed him made it impossible to pretend nothing had changed. He tried to hold himself together, repeating to himself over and over that he hadn't done anything wrong. But before he could settle into that fragile sense of control, one of his classmates suddenly slammed her desk and shouted at him, calling him a criminal. She had declared firmly that Miyuki would never lie, and that even Kondo-senpai from the soccer club had seen the incident. With two respected students backing the same story and someone like Eiji on the other side, everyone supposedly knew who to believe. Eiji, unable to bear the weight of it any longer, had told himself he didn't want to hear any more. He couldn't understand how things had spiraled so far out of control. All he could feel was despair. That day, he spent lunch completely alone. Then his phone vibrated. When he checked the screen, he saw a message from the club president informing him that the club meeting had been canceled and that there was no need for him to show up. As he walked through the hallway afterward, Eiji couldn't help but think bitterly that there was no one left in the class he could trust anymore. And yet, despite everything, a tiny flicker of hope still clung to him. Even though the message had been clear, he told himself that maybe, just maybe, someone might still be there at the clubroom, waiting. Eiji had wondered if there might still be someone he could talk to, maybe even ask for help. With that faint hope in mind, he made his way to the clubroom. As he approached the door, he heard familiar voices coming from inside. He paused, only to catch snippets of their conversation. One of the club members was asking whether they had remembered to lie to Aono and tell him the club was canceled. The club president responded that he had already messaged Aono during lunch. Another voice chimed in, saying it was scary just seeing him around. Then, their tone shifted as they began discussing the draft Eiji had drawn. One of them mockingly asked what they were supposed to do with it, adding that Aono had no real talent, but still had the nerve to put so much effort into the manuscript. Another voice cruelly remarked that he was seriously pathetic. Eiji stood there in silence, each word cutting deeper than the last. It became painfully clear to him that he no longer had anyone left on his side. For a moment, he thought perhaps his homeroom teacher, Ms. Aish, might be someone he could still rely on. Maybe, just maybe, she would listen. When he reached the classroom, he stopped at the doorway. Inside, he saw Miyuki and her friend speaking with the teacher. Quietly, he stayed back and listened. Miyuki's friend was telling the teacher that Miyuki had seemed troubled recently and asked if she could talk to her privately. Ms. Aish responded kindly, noting that it was rare for Amada-san to be the one going through a hard time. She gently asked if Miyuki had perhaps gotten caught up in something because of her kindness. Miyuki nodded softly and said it was something like that. The teacher reassured her, saying that it was all right and that there was no other student as exceptional as she was. She added that she would always be on Miyuki's side. Hearing those words, Eiji felt something inside him collapse. He couldn't take it anymore. Without making a sound, he turned and ran from the classroom, his thoughts in turmoil. He made his way to the locker room, hoping to clear his head, but what he found there only worsened everything. As soon as he opened his locker, dozens of crumpled papers spilled out onto the floor. Each one was covered in hateful scribbles and venomous messages. One warned him not to snitch, or the writer would report him to the authorities, ending the note with a mocking "LOL." Another message bluntly asked if he had died yet. Without thinking, he turned and bolted out of the school, unable to stay another moment. He didn't stop running until he reached home. When he walked in, his mother greeted him warmly, asking if the club had ended early. Eiji simply told her that he was home and explained that the club meeting had been canceled at the last minute. His mother nodded gently, remarking that he hadn't seemed well lately and reminding him with quiet concern to make sure he got enough rest. Eiji thanked her softly, also noting that both she and his brother must be tired too. But his mother only smiled in response, telling him that kids shouldn't worry about grown-ups, that it was their job to care for him, not the other way around. His older brother, who had just stepped into the room, telling Eiji that he should just enjoy school and focus on being a student. That was all they ever wanted from him. Since their father's passing, Eiji had always noticed something unspoken in their home. Their mother had never once cried in front of them. She had always kept a smile on her face, pushing through the hardest days just to shield them from worry. His brother, too, had taken on a quiet strength. He had stepped into their father's role with steady resolve, doing his best to support both the family and the small shop they ran. Watching them, AG had felt a deep weight settle on his heart. He told himself that he would do his best too, that if he just kept enduring things, then no one else would have to sacrifice their happiness. Meanwhile, in a quiet room somewhere else, Miyuki sat on her bed in silence. Her thoughts drifted endlessly, refusing to let her rest. Ever since that day, sleep had become elusive. Over and over again, she kept asking herself why things had turned out this way. Sometimes she even wondered if it had all been a bad dream. She thought back to that day, telling herself that maybe, if Kondo-senpai hadn't been there, and if she had just clung to Eiji and cried, begging him not to break up, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe it could have been different. When she had later seen how Eiji was being bullied, she had felt her chest tighten. Her eyes had burned with the threat of tears. But she had told herself that she couldn't cry. She was the one who didn't deserve to cry. Not after everything. She had given up that right. Everything had started so innocently, just a silly conversation about love. Back then, she had been happy with Eiji, but their relationship had stalled, or at least that's what her friends had believed. They had misunderstood her uncertainty and introduced her to Kondo-senpai, someone who, they claimed, understood relationships better. At first, she had resisted, but Kondo-senpai had been everything people admired: athletic, intelligent, the ace of the soccer team, effortlessly handsome, and always gentle. Compared to the awkward innocence she shared with Eiji, Kondo seemed mature, like someone who had figured everything out. He had made her feel seen in a way that confused her. She remembered a moment when he had looked at her and said that no guy could resist a cute girl like her. Then, with a laugh, he had added that he was just joking. She hadn't known how to respond. Before the awkwardness could settle, he had smiled and casually asked if she wanted to drink something else. Before walking away, he had told her that she was seriously attractive and suggested that maybe Eiji was simply intimidated by that. She had begun recounting the events of that evening when Kondo-san had gently pulled her close and kissed her deeply. She had reflected that everything she had meant to give to Eiji had ended up being taken by someone else. It had not taken long before Kondo-san had taken it all away. Later, while lying quietly in bed beside him, she had remained silent under the covers. Kondo had smiled and had told her that it was okay. He had said that if someone did not make a move on a girlfriend as attractive as Miyuki, then it was that person's fault. He had assured her that she was not the one in the wrong, rather the one who had failed as a man was Eiji. Then she had recalled how Kondo had pulled her close again, asking suggestively if they could do it once more. She had not resisted. At that moment, she thought that she had likely been the perfect mark. However, she admitted to herself that a part of her had felt strangely good about the guilt. And once she had become completely dependent on him, she had realized there was no turning back. After that, they sat in silence for a while. Kondo casually checked his phone and mentioned that the club on the 30th had been cancelled, suggesting that they hang out instead. She hesitantly responded, saying that the 30th was Eiji's birthday. Kondo shrugged it off and said indifferently that he would just ask another girl then. She was visibly shocked and asked him what he meant by that. He explained that she was always prioritizing Eiji, and it had made him feel like he barely existed in her world. He admitted he was tired of trying to control her and suggested they end their relationship, claiming it would make both of them happier. Panicked, she asked what he was saying and pleaded with him to wait just a second. And so, she had chosen Senpai. She had believed that Eiji would forgive her, that he would still accept her in the end. She had been relying on that hope. After all, he was the one she had spent over 10 years with, the person she had believed to be her destined partner. She had truly thought she would marry Eiji, but the woman within her had whispered something different. She had felt the urge to confess everything, to tell everyone the truth, that it had been her who had led things astray, who had cheated, and yet she had been terrified of losing everything if she did. The next day at school, when Eiji walked in and opened his locker, trays fell out, and he found sticky notes with hurtful messages written about him. Later, as he walked through the school corridor, he overheard students whispering and gossiping about him. He heard a group of girls saying they didn't want to talk to him anymore. When he opened the classroom door, he saw a picture of himself on the whiteboard with a message telling him he wasn't welcome and should leave the class. There was even an image of his father's shop among the things displayed, and when he saw it, he was completely stunned. He hadn't expected them to go that far. He couldn't help but feel that he was the reason behind the damage to his father's reputation, and that thought tore him apart inside. A deep sense of guilt and helplessness began to rise in him. Unable to bear it anymore, he opened the door in a rush. Unable to bear it anymore, he opened the door in a rush, and to his surprise, Kondo was standing right there. Kondo looked at him with a twisted smile and mockingly asked how it felt to be the criminal boy. Eiji, still shaken, asked why Kondo would spread such a terrible lie about him. In response, Kondo casually said that he did it because it was fun, watching him lose everything, including his girlfriend. According to Kondo, the whole thing made for a great show. Then Kondo cruelly added that it was the boy's own fault for believing that someone like him could ever be with Miyuki. He said the boy should just drop out because ruining people's lives was something Kondo actually enjoyed. Those words hit the boy harder than anything else. He dropped to his knees, completely broken, hopelessness filling every part of him, until he finally lost consciousness and fainted. Later, while Eiji was in the medical room, the medical teacher told him that she would inform his homeroom teacher, just in case. Eiji thanked her politely. After that, he sat down on the medical bed, his thoughts clouded with hopelessness. He felt that no one was going to help him, not even the teacher. In his mind, people would naturally side with someone like Miyuki, who was smart and capable, rather than with someone like him. He believed he couldn't even talk to his parents or his brother about it. After being betrayed by Miyuki, who had been both his best friend and his girlfriend, he felt as though he was completely ruined, with a year and a half still left until graduation. He wondered how he was supposed to survive all of that. Out of habit, he unlocked his phone, only to find dozens of messages, most of them filled with harsh words directed at him. One message, however, stood out. It said that, after what he had supposedly done to Amada, the other club members were too scared to be around him. The message ended with an apology and a request that he stop coming to the club. It was from one of his clubmates. Eiji couldn't believe it. He told himself that none of it was true, that he hadn't done anything wrong. But when he checked the group chat, he saw that he had already been removed. Unable to hold back his emotions any longer, he lay down on the bed, pulled the blanket over his head, and began to cry silently beneath it. After some time, once he had calmed down, Eiji apologized to the medical teacher for being a burden and told her that he was feeling fine now. She responded gently, saying that if he truly felt better, he could leave, and reminded him to take care of himself. As he walked up the stairs afterward, his thoughts turned dark again. He told himself that, for now, he would just have to get used to it, used to the pain, until his heart grew numb to people's cruelty. But even if he kept enduring it all, he believed people would still call him a creep and continue to hate him. Then a thought crossed his mind. Maybe there was a simpler option. Maybe he could just end everything by jumping off the rooftop. That, he felt, would make things easier. He opened the rooftop gate slowly and stepped out into the open. There, to his surprise, stood a girl, someone he hadn't expected. She was looking straight at him, and in that moment, standing at the edge of hopelessness, right when it felt like there was no way out, he met the girl who would go on to change his fate. The girl wonders who he even was. Eiji introduced himself as a second-year student who had skipped class and wandered around the school, which was how he ended up on her terrace. He thought he couldn't reveal the truth, that he had actually come there intending to end his life. She addressed him as senpai, and he recalled that she was Ichiju, the brilliant student who had ranked first in the entrance exam the previous year. With her kindness and beauty, she had quickly become the school's ideal, and it seemed that many classmates had already confessed to her. Ichiju asked why he kept showing up there. He apologized, mentioning that she might have heard the rumors about him, and asked if she would mind letting him use that spot just to hide until lunch break. She refused, saying it was her place and she wasn't going to give it up, so he should leave. When he asked if she had heard the rumors about him, she admitted she had, but still denied his request, explaining that even though she knew of them, they were still just rumors, and she hadn't witnessed anything herself. He argued that romance was like an illness. So why would anyone believe such one-sided and vague stories? He added that the students were only overreacting and unfairly condemning someone without knowing the truth, which was awful. Eiji then asked if she believed him. Ichiju replied that it wasn't about believing or not believing, but that hurting someone based on biased and incomplete information carried too great a risk. Eiji reflected on her words and thanked her. She grew confused as to why he was thanking her. He told her it was fine if she didn't understand. Suddenly, it began raining, and Eiji suggested they go inside or she might catch a cold. She instead told him to leave her alone, and he couldn't understand why she was always by herself. When he wondered aloud about it, she answered that he didn't need to worry about her catching a cold because it was her last day. Eiji was shocked and asked her to calm down, but she shouted at him to leave her alone, declaring that she wanted to die. As she moved toward the fence, Eiji grabbed her hand and told her to stop. Suddenly, she slipped, and they both stumbled toward the fence, with Eiji shielding her. She wondered why he was trying to protect her and thought that if the fence was old and unstable, he might fall as well. Eiji shouted at her to be quiet, saying that no one needed a reason to save a life. He added that if she truly wanted to die, then at least she should spend that day with him and skip school together. She grew flustered, questioning whether he even understood the situation. He replied that he couldn't help it. He had come there intending to die as well, but he had never imagined he would end up stopping a junior from doing the same thing. She grew emotional, started crying, and eventually agreed with him. After some time, the rain stopped, and they both stood up to go inside. Eiji took out a cloth and offered it to Ichiju. Though she hesitated at first, she eventually accepted it gratefully. Eiji then asked her not to stare at him too much. As he glanced at her, he noticed a bandaged spot where her clot had been transplanted. Catching his gaze, Ichiju mentioned that he had first denied doing such things, yet was now acting the same way as those who harassed her. Eiji quickly apologized. Ichiju then wondered aloud what they should do next. He invited her to skip school with him, hinting that he had a plan. She smiled, assuming he was just desperate and didn't actually have one. She added that it wasn't the kind of cool, delinquent thing he seemed to think it was. Ichiju eventually agreed, smiling, while Eiji quietly reflected on how she could still smile despite everything. From what he had heard from some classmates, he realized that she often wondered how people could think they could date someone they didn't even know, or if they had any idea what it meant to suddenly be confessed to by a stranger. She had always carried that fear. She had once told another classmate that he only cared about her looks and status. He thought about how one of the people who had testified earlier seemed completely broken, and he feared that Ichiju might tear apart his words in the same way. But, unexpectedly, she didn't. Instead, she offered him her handkerchief, and Eiji thanked her for it. He then checked his bag to see if he had a rice ball, and upon finding one, handed some to her as well. She accepted it with gratitude, and after tasting it, she remarked that it was delicious. Curious, she wondered if it was tuna mixed with mayonnaise. Eiji confirmed it and asked if she had never tried it before, since it was the classic rice ball filling found in convenience stores. She admitted she hadn't, adding that it felt as though everyone else had been eating something that delicious all along. Eiji told her that there were plenty of other tasty things in the world, and it would be such a waste to die without knowing them. Ichiju agreed, saying it truly was delicious, and her interest was piqued. Eiji then invited her to come over to his place, which left her flustered. They stood on the ground floor of the school when Eiji suggested they should leave. Ichiju pointed out that the front gate was locked and wondered how they would get out. Eiji replied they could simply climb over it. Shocked, she reminded him that she was wearing a skirt. He quickly clarified that he was only joking before showing her a small metal door beside the main entrance. He explained that from that door they could unlock it from the inside, though once it closed it would automatically lock, making re-entry impossible. Exiting, however, was easy. Ichiju asked why he even knew about such a thing, and he thought to himself that an honor student like her wouldn't. He told her that once in a while, breaking the rules a little was fine. Then he grabbed her hand to lead her away, only to feel himself flushing as he realized what he had done. Ichiju noticed and wondered why, urging him to hurry up. He questioned whether it was really all right for her to hold hands with a boy she had just met. She replied that she wouldn't be lying if she said she wasn't uncomfortable, but in plays or movies, it was something normal. She added that it was the first time she had ever held a boy's hand, so she asked him to take good care of her. Eiji then noticed she was blushing too and thought to himself that it was enough. She was the one making him embarrassed now. He led her away while someone in the distance spotted them and wondered what they were doing. Eiji didn't look back even once, thinking that as if leaving their pasts behind, they both faced forward together. Ichiju wondered if she was really trying to skip school with someone she had just met. She reminded herself of the promises the other boys had made to protect her, and recalled how many times she had been told similar things when being confessed to. She did not want to repeat those harsh words because they triggered her trauma. Still, she felt that Eiji was different, such a good person that it made her worry. She believed that if she was with him, she might be able to escape her current hell. It became known that Miyuki's boyfriend was Kondo, a man at the center of that world. His father was a city councilman, and he had entered one of the prefecture's top 3 prestigious high schools. He had become the ace of the soccer team, led a weak team to the national tournament, and was scouted by renowned private universities. Since childhood, he had always stood out. Even minimal studying placed him at the top. His high education, tall height, and exceptional soccer talent made him the center of attention, and he had been popular since elementary school. From the time he had his first girlfriend in 3rd grade, he had never been without one. He never forgot what had happened in 8th grade. At that time, an otaku and an ideal girl in the class had been dating, a childhood friend couple who believed without doubt that they would marry in the future. Their relationship had seemed disgustingly pure, but slowly, he made the girl fall for him. She then began claiming that Eiji was worthless and that having him as a boyfriend had been the greatest shame of her life. Kondo thought Miyuki was a foolish girl acting like a tragic heroine. He believed that all ideas about destined partners were laughable, and he found it amusing to the point of recording the girl's insults and playing them back to Eiji, which he considered a masterpiece. Eiji was shocked to learn that Miyuki had told Kondo she would marry him. She later asked Eiji to break up, saying she would be happy with Kondo. She grew closer to Kondo, who thought she had finally become truly happy. From then on, he developed a love for stealing other men's women, and the women who fell for his charm usually abandoned studying him. The grades of such girls declined, and the childhood friend couples ended up turning old friends into enemies. Kondo thought she was a foolish woman who could not understand such things. He dumped her as soon as high school began. At that time, she cried, wondering why he was so determined to break up. She believed everything should be thrown away just to choose him. People wished he would hate the new woman and eventually hate her as well, which would lead to their breakup. In the end, the former class ideal fell into trauma and reached a tragic conclusion. Watching that, Kondo thought it was a good outcome. In his view, women could live life with women in both seriousness and fun. It became Miyuki's turn, and he hurt her hand while spreading the rumor that Eiji had done it. He wondered how far things would fall, and even followed the situation as it unfolded. Miyuki thought that Eiji had not returned since the morning. The words carved into his desk were being erased, and she began to wonder if he had already quit school because of her. She never imagined people would spread such rumors, knowing it was not true. Later, she saw Eiji walking in town. At first, she felt relieved and happy, but then she noticed he was holding Ichiju's hand. Shocked, she questioned who that girl was. The homeroom teacher of Class 2B, Takayanagi, also saw them and thought that Eiji had acted recklessly, though he felt glad that Eiji was safe. He remembered that sometime earlier, while taking attendance, he had noticed Eiji was absent. There had been words carved into his desk telling him to just die or get lost. Yanagi had asked the class if anyone knew about Eiji. A boy had raised his hand and said that Eiji mentioned he was not feeling well and had gone to the nurse's office. Yanagi then told the class he would go check on Eiji and instructed everyone else to line up in the gym first. At that moment, he noticed Miyaki trembling. Yanagi went to the school nurse, Mitsui, who explained that Eiji had not returned. Yanagi mentioned he was about to look for him as well. Mitsui apologized, saying he should have stopped Eiji by force, if necessary, but he seemed estranged, and she wondered if something had happened. When asked directly, Eiji had replied that he was simply not feeling well and wanted to rest. Mitsui said she had searched the entire school but could not find him. Yanagi thanked her and decided to speak with the vice principal, thinking the principal was still occupied with the school assembly. Taka Yanagi went to talk to the vice principal, who mentioned that it was problematic the principal was tied up with the assembly. The vice principal suggested holding a strategy meeting after the school death day and told him to get detailed information from the students. Taka Yanagi agreed and later came to class, asking if everyone knew what the property damage was. He said they should have understood by then that it was all about Eiji's desk. Although they did not know who had done it, from the written words and Eiji's condition, they could roughly imagine what had happened. He reminded them that the school desk was school property, paid for by their parents' taxes, and damaging it was a crime. He added that the culprit might claim it was only a moment of weakness or that Eiji was at fault, but writing slander on someone else's desk could not be justified. He emphasized that just as those who had issued death threats to celebrities had been arrested and could not escape responsibility with excuses, the same applied here. He insisted the incident should not be dismissed as bullying, childish mischief, or a prank, but rather recognized as a crime that would not be overlooked. He wanted them to remember this firmly. After 13 minutes of warning the students, an emergency meeting was held where the teachers were gathered. Eventually, the vice principal and the principal arrived, with the principal apologizing for being late. The principal first thanked Taka Yanagi for contacting them immediately, saying that nothing was more important to address than the bad news. Taka Yanagi replied that it might have been a failure in the way he managed his class and said he would only reflect on that matter. Another teacher remarked that as educators, there would always be things to reflect on. However, he added that Taka Yanagi seemed to have done everything he could, while many others would have tried to conceal the matter just to protect their reputation. That teacher was grade chair EY. The principal agreed with him, saying EY was right, and emphasized that they should focus more on the present and future rather than the past. He then asked if anyone knew how Eiji was doing after leaving early. EY replied that since Taka Yanagi had already asked a few students, he had taken the liberty of calling Eiji's parents himself. He explained that Eiji had gone home early feeling unwell, but it seemed he had returned safely. The principal was relieved to hear this and said he would now share the basic policy he had discussed with the vice principal. He explained that their first priority should be Eiji, warning that if Eiji refused to return to school or decided to drop out, everything would be lost, so they needed to support him firmly. The scene then shifted to Kondo's room, where he was speaking with a girl when his friends arrived, telling him there was trouble. They admitted that they had planned to punish Eiji, so they had graffitied his desk, but now Taka Yanagi was calling it a crime and had started an investigation. Kondo thought that Taka Yanagi had acted surprisingly quickly. He had believed Taka Yanagi was the type to cover things up and assumed that, no matter how big the issue became, his father would handle it. Remaining calm, he listened as his friends wondered if his reaction was too cold, since they had only done it for him. Kondo questioned when he had ever asked them to do such a thing, pointing out that he had only shared his worries with them while they were the ones who spread it around like a joke and ended up damaging school property. They hesitated, about to respond, but Kondo told them that at least there was no hard evidence against them, and without that, they would be finished. He then thought to himself that 2 more slaves had now been acquired. Eiji with Ichiju came out of the school safely and, while resting on the bench, wondered if she was fine. She took a long breath and admitted that it had been really hard to keep up with a boy running at full strength. He thought that her being able to keep up was amazing and mentioned that he had heard she turned down every club that had tried to recruit her. He added that whenever they asked for help, she performed at the level of an ace and must have had both brains and brawn. He then asked her to continue, and for that reason, he kept up as well. She turned her face away, saying he teased her too much, and wondered if he was simply hopeless at explaining things or if he did it on purpose. He replied that it was probably the former. She smiled, called him a liar, and they both left together. When AG reached home, he announced that he was back. His mother remarked that he had returned early that day. He explained that he wasn't feeling well, which was why he had left early, and since his junior was also leaving early, he thought of inviting her for lunch. His mother, realizing something, smiled and said it wasn't a bad idea. AG thought of the Ano kitchen as his home and recalled how his late father, once a chef trained at a famous hotel, had saved money and fallen in love with his mother, who had been working at the front desk. Together, they had opened a vegetarian restaurant. Now his brother, who had graduated from culinary school, was the second-generation owner, while his mother handled accounting and waitressing. His mother told him it would get busy soon, so she asked him to use the back break room, assuring him that lunch would be on her. AG thanked her and told Ichiju to come in without worrying. Ichiju entered hesitantly, greeted AG's mother, introduced herself, and said AG always helped her, apologizing for the sudden visit. Both his mother and brother were shocked to see such a beautiful girl. His mother admitted she had never imagined AG would bring home such a cute girl, and Ichiju had truly surprised her. She then told Ichiju to relax and eat whatever she liked. They both went inside to sit, and AG's mother asked Ichiju to make herself at home. Ichiju thanked her, took the menu, and asked for AG's recommendation. AG suggested she try the special lunch with their signature omelet rice as the main dish. Ichiju was startled by everything on the menu, and AG placed the order for her. He also apologized for the place being so plain. She replied that it felt refreshing and that neither her family home nor her apartment had a Japanese-style room. AG explained that it was his brother and mother's break room where their hobbies overflowed. Ichiju remarked that it felt warm for that very reason and confessed she was jealous of a home that reflected a family's color. She added that AG's family seemed very close, just as her own family had once been. After some time, AG's mother served the food and encouraged them to enjoy the special lunch. When they finished eating, she asked if they would prefer tea or coffee. Ichiju requested tea, and AG's mother became delighted because she also preferred tea. AG thought his mother truly was a tea lover. She told them to take their time and promised to bring the tea once they were done. After that, AG and Ichiju joined their hands to pray before the meal. When Ichiju took her first bite, she found the food exceptionally good. AG thought it was unbelievable that just a while ago they had both been ready to die. He noticed Ichiju blushing as she said everything was delicious, especially the tanjiru, which felt so comforting. AG revealed that it was his late father's special recipe, in which he simmered root vegetables and onions thoroughly in a large pot, creating a broth rich with ingredients. Even with low-salt miso, the umami condensed into a deeply satisfying flavor. He thought that his father was truly someone to be proud of. Ichiju apologized and asked if that had been insensitive. AG denied it, thinking it felt more like she was praising his father, which made him very happy. He told her it was good, that his father must have been a kind man, and said the tanjiru itself spoke of that. AG was genuinely glad that she liked it. She said she felt lucky to be able to eat such gentle food. AG wondered if that was all she had been eating. She then asked if she even deserved to live, admitting she had been apologizing for that thought again and again. She recalled how, even when she went up to the rooftop that day, she couldn't decide and had believed she had finally gathered her resolve. But then she met him, who risked his life just to save her. And now, while eating such delicious food, that resolve was wavering. AG admitted he didn't know what had happened to her, so all he could say might sound irresponsible, but he told her that because she was there, he had been saved, and now he wanted to live. She grew emotional and began to cry. AG thought that until then, she had carried herself with dignity, but in that moment, seeing her break down in tears, he felt as if he was finally witnessing her true self.